Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats weekly podcast episode number 56. I am your host, Dan Matson, aka Wooden Boat Dan the Man. If you can't do it, nobody can. This is the world's first podcast, that's right, the very first in the entire world, fully 100% dedicated to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden boats. And don't forget the romance, because wooden boats have a lot of romance. Welcome to the show today, folks. If you're a repeat visitor, it's great to have you back. If you're new to the show, you're going to love it. We got a lot of fun stuff in store today. Today's featured segment is two interviews that I did recently at the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival. The first is with Steve Stone of offcenterharbor.com. The second is with Eric Blake of Off Center Harbor and also of the Brooklin, Maine Boatyard. Oh, stick around for those two interviews. They're about 37 minutes in length total, and I think you're going to enjoy that. Not much new to report on my 12-foot lap-straight canoe this week. I didn't really work on it. I've been busy working on my house because we're going to downsize, and wow, that just takes time, but the boat is still about 90% done. It's that last 10% that always kills you. I hate that. It's like getting the remodel done on your house, and you don't put the trim up till you go to sell it, 5 years later. Anyway, I'm going to get on that here soon, though, hopefully. I'd like to give a shout-out to our new subscriber, Roger Malcolm. Roger, welcome to the e-news list. If you're listening and you would like to subscribe to my monthly e-newsletter, or whatever you want to call it, it's just a monthly kind of touch and base, giving out some resources, telling you some fun stuff that's coming up. You can subscribe to that by going to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. And if you give me your first and last name and email address, you'll be on that list. Next up, I would like to read an email I got from one of my listeners, a new listener. This is from Daniel White, and here's what he has to say. Hi, Dan. I stumbled across your podcast a couple weeks ago, and I love your show. And even better, I have a year's worth of podcasts to listen to now. About 4 years ago, I built a hard chine 9-foot boat from plywood. I made the plans myself while studying SolidWorks CAD and was instantly hooked on wooden boats. Lately, I've been building a 17-foot Thames, I think it's Thames, Thames skiff, and dream of building a small fleet for my local location on the Thames at Maidenhead, which is in Great Britain, England. I know I have plenty to learn and am enjoying every moment of it. Keep up the good work, Dan. Love the show, and happy anniversary from across the pond, Dan White, Maidenhead, Berks. Thanks, Dan, for that word of encouragement. Great to hear from you. I'm glad things are going well on your side of the pond, and I did look at some of your Thames boats and look really cool on your website, so thanks for writing in. Okay, we're going to move right into the interviews with Steve and Eric, and I think we're going to start with Eric, and then we're going to go from Eric's interview right into Steve, so take it away, Eric. Okay, September 8th, 2012, Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival. This is like the 6th interview today, or 5th, but anyway, I'm sitting with Eric Blake from the Brooklin Boatyard in Brooklin, Maine. Eric, welcome to the podcast today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. So you've got a t-shirt here, offcenterharbor.com on.
Yeah.
And so you're part of that new startup. There's 5 guys that got that going, I understand.
Yeah.
Yep. And We talked to Steve Stone a little bit earlier about that. So, but I'd like to talk to you, Eric, about your background with boating and stuff. Tell me about your youth, where you grew up, and if you did any boating then.
Sure. Well, I grew up on in the northeast corner of Vermont, up against the White Mountains and the Canadian border, and spent all my time as a kid trout fishing in little ponds and so forth.
Oh, really?
And really got into canoes. My dad built houses, so I had access to a wood shop and started building canoes pretty much out of just interest and trying to figure it out on my own when I was 14, 15 years old.
How were you building them at that time?
Cedar strip.
Really? Cedar strip?
Yeah.
Over a mold?
Yeah, over a mold. A lot of the high school program was building some Platt Mumford kind of skin-on-frame, ultra lightweight canoes and so forth, but I really wanted something I could haul up into a beaver pond and not. I just thought of them as being pretty fragile,
right?
And wanted to and loved the beauty of wood, and started building cedar strip canoes. So that was really kind of my introduction to
that was
boat
when you were
building.
14 or so, huh?
Yeah.
So was your dad building any boats at that time?
No.
Okay.
I just had access to a table saw.
Yeah. So you cut all your own cedar strips.
Yeah,
really?
He thought I was crazy. He didn't. There was no real. It all just came to me. It was something I got interested in, and it was great. A bunch of my friends got into it. We started building canoes and kayaks. And
were you selling any of them or anything at that time, Eric, or just using them yourself?
Later in life, as when I was putting myself through school and so forth, I went to the landing school in Maine. After that, and I went to the international
Which is the boat school
in Kennebunkport, Maine, and I did a small boat design class there. And my thought was that I really wanted to learn how to design small boats, move back to Vermont, and open a canoe shop.
Really?
That was my idea. I'd never been sailing before.
Oh.
I'd never been in a sailboat. So going to the landing school really got me on I got introduced to the much bigger world of wooden boats.
Yeah.
And kind of career took off from there.
Wow.
Canoes took a sideline, and as I needed money to kind of pay the next month's rent, I'd call home and say, "Hey, Dad, you know that 11-foot canoe that I built back in?
Oh, really?
You think you could unload that on the trading post? So
really?
So I didn't build them to sell, but they actually ended up helping me get through school and so forth.
Yeah, through the landing school.
Through the landing school.
So then what did you do after the landing school? After
the landing school, I commercial fished down on Cape Cod for about 3 or 4 months to save some money, and enrolled in a boat building program in the UK called the International Boat Building Training College.
Really?
And it's a year-long program that basically gears you towards sitting the UK's City and Guilds exam, which is basically exams based around the trades in the UK. So it's really an apprenticeship-style boat building school.
Wow.
I was intending to do 2 years at the landing school after I fell in love with boats. I was going to go back and do the building program after I finished the design, and met a guy on my design course from South Africa who had just come from this program in the UK. And he really talked me into going abroad and spending a year in the UK and learning how they do it on the other side of the pond, which is quite different than here.
Yeah, so what was that like, being over there?
It was a real eye-opener. I mean, I was, 18 years old at the time and never been really out of the country, to Canada and so forth. But it was brilliant. I figured that the year abroad would be great and the school would be mediocre, or the school would be great and the year abroad would be mediocre. But it was just a brilliant experience all the way around.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to pause for just a second and put
Sure.
a windscreen on. Okay, we're back with the windscreen on. So you went over there, and what was the school like?
It was a big shipyard. When you enter the school, you go into a joinery program, and for 3 months you don't touch a boat. It was all just learning to use hand tools, crosscut saws, cutting dovetail joints, mortise and tenon joints. It was just an intense series of joinery projects.
All hand tools?
All hand tools.
Wow.
And the school is very focused. They had a big 24-inch table saw and a ship saw. But other than that, pretty much everything was hand tools. And at the time, I was like, man, this isn't really practical. I mean, I'm going to enter the industry and want to know how to run a router.
Yeah.
And my instructor's take was, if you can do this stuff with hand tools, a router is going to be a piece of cake. Mm-hmm. And they were right.
Oh, yeah. What a great way to learn.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So after the 3 months of joinery, then you enter what they call the dinghy basin. and it's just clinker dinghies, carvel dinghies, and you hang some planks. It wasn't a school where you start a boat from soup to nuts. You know, you basically had your planking requirement that you had to fulfill, your timbering out, steam bending oak requirement, copper riveting. So you basically just did these few things in the dinghy basin, and then once the instructors thought you were prepped, they'd say, all right, we're going out into the shipyard, and you'd hang a plank on a 60-foot boat. And it was all timed and graded by the instructor, very much kind of as an apprenticeship style.
Timed and graded.
It was all, the grading of the grading of your copper riveting was the instructor would drag a silk scarf up each rib, and every time the silk scarf hung up on a rove, you were docked a point.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, techniques and getting techniques right. It wasn't necessarily about building a boat from start to finish, in as much as getting these basic set of skills down, which I think is very valuable for me entering the industry.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it wasn't kind of... Because a lot of, boatyards you work at, you're not involved in a project from start to finish. You're putting on a deck or building a cabin house, so it was very practical as far as entering the industry.
Yeah. So you did that for a year, Eric?
It was a year-long program, yeah.
So do they build boats differently over there, or do they train you differently to build boats, or both?
A lot of copper riveting, through riveting.
Oh, okay.
You know, which is the main big difference between, you know, there are other slight differences, but the major difference is all the boats over there are copper nailed and riveted, as opposed to bronze screw fastened.
Oh,
so that was a
okay.
whole set of techniques, and a lot more lap strake boats, a lot more lap strake construction that you see. And I think that's probably a big influence from Norway, Denmark, Sweden. A lot of traditional craft over there is kind of lap strake constructed and so forth.
Yeah.
But it was brilliant. I mean, there were in the shipyard. There were big boats, steam launches, ocean cruising yachts, small. You know, it was just a big cross section of big traditional craft. But you cut your teeth in the dinghy shop, in the dinghy basin.
Wow.
Before you went out and did that stuff. So it was great. I couldn't say more about the program.
Yeah.
But it's a program you don't hear much about. I mean, the school's still going and still very much in existence, but, you know, they don't do a lot of advertising in magazines or anything, but I'm sure glad that I found it.
Yeah. What's it called again?
The IBTC, the International Boatbuilding Training College.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So you went there for a year, and then you come back to the States?
From there, I went to actually got a job on the alumni board at the school, and I went to English Harbor, Antigua in the West Indies.
Oh.
And got a job in a boat shop in the islands for the winter. I figured that would be... I really needed to get some sun after spending a year in the UK. I was pretty pasty, but the thought of traveling to the West Indies sounded fun, and I ended up going south and working in a shipyard there for the winter season, and then returned stateside after that.
Okay, and then what did you do when you got back to the States?
When I got back to the States, I went to the Great Lakes and worked at Steve Van Dam's custom runabout shop on Lake Michigan.
Okay.
In Charlevoix, building kind of custom runabouts, modern wood epoxy, very high-end runabouts, and was there for about a year and a half. And it was a great experience. Kind of introduced me to the mahogany runabout world, which is a huge one, and one that I'm very fond of, but had to get back to the saltwater coast and back into sailboats and so forth.
Yeah, so what did you do then when you went back to the East Coast?
When I went back to the East Coast, I had a stint in North Carolina. I actually found an old boat with the thought that I would rebuild her and sail back to Antigua and get into working seasonally in the islands and on the East Coast of the United States, and spent a couple years restoring an old Alden ketch in Stonewall, North Carolina, up a creek on the Intercoastal Waterway. Spent a couple years restoring her, and was headed to Newport to work the summer season and prep to get to Antigua, and sailed into Newport, Rhode Island from Cape Hatteras, and I was there for about a week and a half on a mooring much too small for the boat, and I was at work at a boatyard in Portsmouth, Rhode Island, and my wife called and she said, "Linea's on the rock."
Oh, really?
And I raced down to the harbor, and it was kind of a catastrophe. It was just the boat was pretty much wrecked.
Oh.
And
what kind of boat was that?
She was an Alden Ketch, a 36-foot Alden Ketch. Beautiful boat.
Oh, no, that makes me sick.
Well,
Did you salvage her, or was
we salvaged her.
Oh, you did?
I actually salvaged her and took her to Sakonnet. I got her put away in a backyard in Sakonnet, Rhode Island, which is actually the birthplace of John Alden.
Oh.
And I went to the islands that winter. The friends who sailed with me from Cape Hatteras north said, "Don't make any rash decisions. Like you're not going to be thinking clearly about this." They said, "Just step away from it and come down to the islands and work for the winter." So I did. I went back down to the Caribbean and worked for the winter. And from the Caribbean, I realized, I was broke. I'd put everything that I had into the project and spent 2 years restoring her. And, I just wasn't going to go through it again.
Yeah.
And from Antigua, I contacted Maynard Bray at Wooden Boat Magazine, who runs a article called Save a Classic. It's the last page of every wooden boat. And that's when I met Maynard. I was 21, 22 years old at the time, and met Maynard and talked through the whole ordeal. And he ran a Save a Classic on the boat, and we managed to find a new home for her in Mystic, Connecticut. And it was really where my relationship started with Brooklin and Maynard and the whole wooden boat scene in the Northeast.
Really?
Yeah.
So you found somebody there that would take her on as a project? And
It was a boat builder who was looking for a retirement project. Jackson Vibbers, a guy, boat builder, shipwright in Mystic, Connecticut.
Yeah.
And he's tinkering away on her.
Wow,
putting her back
nice.
to rights.
Yeah.
And in hopes of, retiring and doing some sailing on her.
So when did you move back to Brooklyn then? Was that your next
When
step?
we came back from the islands and got Linea unloaded, we actually came to the Northwest for 3 years. My wife enrolled in university, and I moved out here not knowing.
To Seattle?
I loved the idea of the Northwest, but didn't really know what I was going to find for shipwright boat work out here.
Yeah.
And we ended up in Portland, Oregon, and I got a job with Schooner Creek Boat Works, Steve Rander, who runs a big kind of custom. It's a big boatyard, but a custom. Really a custom race boat, wood composite, high-end boatyard, and they were in the middle of building Ocean Planet, which was an open 60 wood composite at the time, and it really introduced me to this kind of ultra lightweight, go fast. I mean, they're open 60s are kind of like a 60-foot laser. They're planing mono hulls for single-handed round-the-world, non-stop round-the-world racing.
Oh, my goodness.
And that was a real eye-opener, working there for 3 years. And, it's just a whole nother slice of the industry that I had never been exposed
totally
to.
Different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you did that for 3 years.
We were in Portland for 3 years, and we would come up to the festival here. It was really where I fell in love with this festival. It was great to be back. But we moved back east to Brooklyn. We moved right to Brooklyn, got married, moved to Brooklyn, Maine, and I got a job at the Brooklin Boatyard, and that's where I've been for the last 9 years.
9 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about the Brooklin Boatyard, a little history and what's going on there.
Brooklin Boatyard was started by my boss's father, Joel White. Joel started the boatyard in the 1960s, late 1960s, and kind of kept it small. It was a small crew, but he was a trained naval architect at MIT, and designed and built 1 or 2 new boats a year, and kind of kept the boat small. His son Steve White took the boatyard over in the late 80s, and ever since Steve took the yard over, has really kind of pushed to make the yard bigger and better. Joel once said, "I've spent my whole life trying to keep this boatyard as small as I could, and Steve's going to spend the rest of his life making it as big as he can." And the boatyard builds a lot of custom boats, wood composite typically. They do big restorations of museum-type restorations of big traditional boats, and I work with about 50 guys.
Wow,
and
that's a big shop.
It's a big shop. It's a lot of guys, but in a very rural setting. It's on the tip of the Blue Hill Peninsula. It's kind of the middle of nowhere.
Is it on the water?
It's right on Center Harbor, which is just an epic little harbor full of wooden boats. We haul and store and maintain about 200 classic wooden boats in Center Harbor, and build 2 to 3 new custom boats a year out of there.
Really?
Yeah.
So does everybody take their boats out of the water there in the winter?
Well, I mean, that's a big, wooden boats love cold water, and they love Maine because they're only in the water for, 5 or 6 months out of the year.
Right.
The harbors actually freeze in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So, unless there's a few harbors that don't, and unless you have a bubbler around your boat, the boats come out of the water and go in storage sheds.
Really interesting.
So it's a lot of good work for a boatyard, There's constant maintenance and so forth. Yeah. And quite a collection of classics up there.
Yeah. So what's do you have a favorite or funnest project you've worked on there at the Brooklin Boatyard in the last 9 years?
Oh boy. They've all...
Or top 5?
They've all been spectacular.
Really?
We had the chance to restore the 72-foot commuter from the 1930s called Aphrodite, and she's kind of an iconic, big Wall Street commuter. And we did a big, full... soup to nuts restoration on her, and that was really a famous, fabulous project in that you were held to the standards of how the boat was built originally.
Wow.
Everything was copper riveted, double planked, mahogany on oak as she was originally. And when you're doing a museum type restoration like that, that's fun because you're not reinventing the wheel, you're not breaking out modern techniques in as much as you're recreating a boat how they built it to begin with. And she has a really elaborate torpedo stern. So it's just a really fun project and a great boat. Every time she comes back to the harbor, it's just you melt, So it's a very, very cool project to be involved with.
Yeah.
A few years back, we built a 90-foot yawl called Beckway, and that was fun to be involved in a big ocean-going classic yawl. Biggest boat I've ever been involved with from a building standpoint, and it was a challenge. It was just a massive project. It was a 2-year project, and one that I don't think I'll likely forget soon.
Wow.
But I really love building. We build a lot of just spirit of tradition, classic day sailors, long overhangs with kind of hot rod appendages and sail plans, which are just beautiful to look at, and they go like smoke.
Whose designs are they?
A lot of the designs are in-house.
Oh, they are?
We have an in-house design office. Bob Stevens, who took over as a predecessor to Joel White, designed at the Boatyard for years, and he has gone on his own. We have a lot of the boats are designed in-house, but we also build to S&S, Alden, Jim Taylor, lots of different designers we've built from their designs in the past. This winter we've got a 47-foot Bob Stevens design carbon and cedar strip carbon sheathed hot rod day sailor, and a 70-foot custom sloop that was actually a Dieter Impacker design. She was designed to be built in aluminum, and we're going to cold mold her.
Oh, wow.
And she's kind of a big ocean passage maker. So 2 very different projects.
Yeah.
And, it's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, how fun.
Yeah.
So you actually get paid to do this stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm a little jealous. Yeah. So do you have any boats yourself right now?
I do.
What
I've got an old Blanchard Senior knockabout, if you can believe that.
Do you really? From Seattle?
I got in Portland from the Sea Scouts, and I dragged back east with me.
Oh, really?
She's Blanchard number 80, and she's a great little knockabout. I kind of alternate years between putting her in, and we've got an old lobster boat, an old down east style, very narrow lobster boat that we...
Is that a power boat?
Yeah, power boat, a single screw power boat, based on a traditional Maine lobster boat, but from the 30s, so she's very narrow and therefore very efficient. She burns about 3/4 of a quart of diesel an hour. Three-quarters of a gallon of diesel an hour at kind of 8 knots, which is my style of spending time on the water in a power boat.
Yeah, very cool.
But and then a bunch of little dinghies and so forth. So I've got a 7-year-old son, so it's nice to introduce him to sailing little dinghies, and the more time I spend on the water sailing these big yachts that we build, the more time I really enjoy getting in a little 7-foot pram and kind of slumping around the cove,
Yeah, small boats are fun.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time today, Eric, and got a really interesting background. You've done a lot of different things in the wooden boat building stuff. It's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, it's the fascinating part of the wooden boat industry is that there's so many different sects of it, and it's nice to be a part of.
Definitely. So, if somebody wants to find out more about Brooklin Boatyard, what would they do?
BrooklynBoatyard.com. There's
Okay.
a website and lots of great information on there, and sets of plans and so forth to ponder, pictures of past projects.
Okay.
And if they're ever up in Brooklyn, the doors are always open. Come on in, say hello, have a walk around. Center Harbor's kind of a magical place to find yourself. It's
Yeah.
not an easy one to get to, but yeah.
Okay, and Brooklyn spelled Brooklin.
L-I-N.
L-I-N, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, not L-Y-N, like Brooklyn, New York.
Right.
So.
We call it the other Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Very good. Well, anything like you'd like to add or say to the listeners today, Eric, in closing?
No. Just, the wooden boat world's a really fascinating one to be involved in, and the sooner you discover that, the more fun you're going to have.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for your time, Eric.
Yeah, nice chatting
Appreciate
with
it.
you.
Next up is Steve Stone of Off Center Harbor. We're going to do an interview with him now, so take it away, Steve. Okay, it is September 8th, 2012 at the Port Townsend Wooden Boat Festival. I'm at a picnic table with Steve Stone. Steve, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you, Dan.
Good to have you here. So Steve is with a startup company called Off Center Harbor, and which is out of Brooklin, Maine, I understand.
Right, offcenterharbor.com.
Yeah. So before we talk about that, though, let's talk about your background and your attraction to wooden boats and the boating that you've done even back in your youth. Tell me what you've been up to.
Well, I started out, my father, like many of us, my father brought home a sailboat one day. It was a little laser, and we took it out once, and after a nightmare first outing with bloody noses and so on from the boom. Somehow we navigated that first outing in high winds, and just I got hooked on it and sailed the little laser and then HOWB cats when I was in high school, and then didn't sail for a number of years through college and so on, and then ended up in the South Pacific on a Hairsoft 38-foot leeboard ketch, L. Francis design, in New Zealand. With some really, really great folks, and ended up on that for a few days cruising, and that just hooked me back into sailing and the whole idea.
So how did you end up there? You said
I was between summers or between years, one summer in film school, I headed to the South Pacific and backpacked around, and
really?
And just by chance ended up on a 38-foot Hairsoft that was
an
incredible.
L.
Francis design. It's design number 107.
A sloop? Or?
It's a ketch.
And
38 feet and 3-foot draft with lee boards. And so we cruised around the South Pacific. I was really lucky. Chris Powell owned the boat at the time, and Wayne Roberts built it. And Chris was kind enough to let me aboard for a few days, and I just got hooked. In fact, this was 20 some odd years ago, read Maynard's book on the Hairsofts while I was on that boat. And then here 20 some odd years later, Maynard's a partner in this new venture, offcenterharbor.com. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah. Wow. So lee boards are essentially center boards that go off the sides of the boat, right?
Exactly, right.
And so what's it like to sail with those? I've seen those. I've never sailed a boat like that.
Well, that particular boat, it sailed very well without the lee board, so you didn't have to put them down that often.
Really? Maybe if you were just tacking or heavy wind.
Losing headway if you're close hauled or so on.
I see. Interesting.
So you only need them part of the time, and because of that, then you get. Because you have the lee boards, you get a lot less draft. So that was 38-foot boat, and you can look up that boat in L. Francis's Sensible Cruising Designs.
Okay.
And that design, number 107, was his last design that he designed before he died, and he actually died before he created the construction details. So to my knowledge, that boat in New Zealand is the only one built to that design in the world.
Wow, okay.
And phenomenal boat.
So you got to sail on that for a few days, and you got hooked again, so then you came back to the States, and what did you do?
Right, and a number of years later, I was in business most of my career and did corporate turnaround stuff, and ended up kind of at the end of my career helping old technology companies move into new technology, and was in Brooklyn, and was down working on a project for fun at the Brooklin Boatyard
So how did you end up in Brooklin, though? Were you from Brooklin originally?
Not from there. We had gone there many times over the years and rented a house, and I went to the small Reach Regatta that Wooden Boat puts on there, and it's just a wonderful event.
Yeah.
So kind of got hooked on Brooklin, and Steve White was kind enough to kind of let me work on a project with one of his guys there.
He's the owner of the Brooklin Boatyard?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And so as we were steam bending frames one day into an S-boat, Maynard Bray had been coming by, as he always does, to projects in Brooklyn.
And tell us who Maynard is?
Yeah, Maynard Bray is the technical editor for Wooden Boat magazine, and has been for 30 years, I believe.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
So he probably, my description of him is he probably knows as much or more about traditional and classic wooden boats from a historian's perspective as anybody in the world.
Wow.
And so when he came by, he's always full of knowledge, and this was a hair-soft boat we were steam bending frames into and restoring. Mm-hmm. And he was taking still pictures while we were steam bending these frames, and I said, "Hey, Maynard, does that camera do video? Let's, And so we switched the camera to video, and he took a clip, and then he played the clip back, and he was just in awe. He said, "That one clip shows steam bending of frames better than I've been able to show in still pictures and text in 30 years." And so I have a filmmaking background, as I think I mentioned, and so that got me to thinking that, wow, maybe we should make a whole video of this steam bending process. Mm-hmm. So we did, and that was our first video, and it came out well enough that we shot a second one and a third one, and now Off Center Harbor has, I think over 70 videos on the site now.
So tell me, for somebody that doesn't know anything about Off Center Harbor, tell me what it is and what you guys do.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So offcenterharbor.com is a video website and created by several leaders in the field. And the founders include Ben Mindlowitz, who does the calendar for wooden boats. He's a photographer of some renown, and Maynard Bray, as I mentioned. Eric Blake is one of the partners, and he's a lead boat builder at Brooklin Boatyard. And Bill Mayer is a partner as well, and Bill Mayer has written numerous articles for maritime magazines, including Wooden Boat and Maine Boats, Homes and Harbors, and others.
Okay.
So it's these guys all came together, and I have a filmmaking background, so it kind of makes a complete team, and we're just having a blast at it, having a lot of fun.
So it's a video website that you subscribe to.
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's a video website, and we have no advertising, so we make our revenue from membership fees. And so you can join the site for $29 a year. Mm-hmm. And we also offer lifetime memberships, which a surprising number of people take that option as well.
Really? Okay.
But $29 a year for membership, and that gives you access to all the videos and all the blogs on the site. We also have blogs.
Okay. So you've got about 70 videos, you say?
Right.
Yeah. So give me an example of some of the stuff you've got on there, some of the people that are writing and doing the videos for you guys.
Yeah, so what we wanted to do is create a comprehensive collection of videos that really spans a wide variety of topics. And so some of those include boat building topics, such as I mentioned steam bending of frames and repair of plank ends, and we have maintenance videos, and we have painting videos. So that's more on the building, and that's in our section called In the Shop. Mm-hmm. Then we have a section called On the Water, and that includes introducing kids to boats in the water in our family section, and also on the water, because Ben and Maynard are partners in this, they can pick up the phone and call anybody or pop an email, and we can get on any boat in the world, really, in short notice.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do. We get on boats like Malabar 2 and Aphrodite, the 72-foot commuter launch, and we take our members on those boats that it would be hard for any of us, including us, to get on board, and we have a chat with the owner and take them for a sail, and went screaming down the Reach at 40 knots on Aphrodite.
What kind of boat is that?
It's a 72-foot commuter launch.
Commuter launch?
Yeah, and the commuter launch meaning, back in the 20s and 30s, some of the guys that worked on Wall Street, they commuted from their Long Island summer homes into Wall Street every morning. And so it was a big race every morning. And Aphrodite was one of the legendary boats in that realm that Jock Whitney owned. He was a famous Wall Street guy.
Is that a power boat then?
It's a power boat, right? Yeah. So you get on board, and this is a good example. We get actually on board Aphrodite with the captain, and the captain walks us through the boat, and we get in the engine room, and there's 1,000 horsepower Caterpillars in there, and we go in the engine room and check it out, and talk to the two guys that actually restored her a number of years ago at Brooklin Boatyard.
Cool.
So it's kind of the inside scoop. What we started offcenterharbor.com for is really because we figured out video can really bring people close into the world of classic boats. Talking to the experts and talking to the people that own these boats and rebuild these boats and so on.
I see. And who are some of the people that are writing some of the articles?
Yeah, thanks for asking that.
Got some bigger name people there too, I think.
We did. One of the things we did early on with the site is like I said, we wanted our members to be able to feel close to the experts in the field. And so we went and signed up over 20 of the leading experts like Harry Bryan and Dick Wagner, who started the Center for Wooden Boats in Seattle on Lake Union, and Havilah Hawkins, who's a 3-generation schooner captain. And we signed all those folks up as what we call guides. So there are experts on our site, and they write blogs regularly for us. So I think there's 80, 90 blogs on the site so far, with topics such as, I think the first topic we gave to them was the 3 boats I lust after and why. And the reason for that is we wanted to know, these guys and women as well have been in this for decades. What are the boats they lust after? And why? Because that would put maybe 60 or 70 boats on our members' radars that may not be on their radars. And then they'd get the insight of these experts on why do those boats appeal to them. And we wanted kind of an instant kind of a tributaries that our members could follow, check out these boats and the plans and the photographs and so on. So,
Cool. Is there any avenue for a subscriber to write in with a question, a technical question about a building or something about a boat? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, great question. After every video at the bottom of the page and every blog, there's a comment section. So there's a pretty lively discussion on some of these videos. So, and it's a pretty unique environment because if Maynard writes a blog, for example, then someone can write in a question or a comment, and Maynard will actually reply. So and our guides do that. So if they write a blog, and you write a comment on the blog, then they actually see those. They get them via email and they reply.
Nice.
So it's a nice way to interact with some of the leaders in the field.
Yeah, cool. So how did you come up with the name Off Center Harbor?
Yeah, great question.
So I remember the first time I saw them, I'm like, okay, what's this all about?
Well, it stems from Joel White, the famous boat designer from Brooklyn. Joel and Maynard and Bill Mayer, one of the partners of Off Center Harbor, they were all friends, and probably 30 or 40 years ago, their perspective, there's a Center Harbor Yacht Club, and in Center Harbor, which is where Brooklyn is. And in those days, I think Center Harbor Yacht Club may have been sort of exclusive. And the joke was, I don't know about the reality, the joke was, to be a member, sort of like some yacht clubs, you have to maybe walk down the dock with a certain saunter and wear a certain, kind of clothes. And their joke was that, hey, we're going to be the Off Center Harbor Yacht Club, where you can wear what you want and you can actually be barefoot and you don't have to walk in a certain way.
I see.
So we picked up on that, and just the whole idea of being off-center. Our videos are, what people tell us is they're really authentic. And we don't stage things, we don't light it, we don't script, what these experts are going to say. We ask them questions and have them show us. For example, Harry Bryant, legendary boat builder from Canada, we went up to his shop for a whole weekend and shot about 8 videos. We didn't know we were going to get 8 videos, but he is so masterful, and he teaches all the time at the Wooden Boat School. So we were really lucky, and So there's videos of Harry Bryant, how he sharpens plane blades, and a tour of his shop, and which is kind of a legendary off-the-grid shop. He runs his entire boat shop off the grid.
Yeah, I remember reading that article a few years ago about his shop.
Right. So we actually, now you can get in the videos and actually see his shop and how he operates, and see his shmee. We use the word shmee on offcenterharbor.com, which is a word that we
got some kettle corn in the background here, guys, so hang on here a second. I'm going to pause. Okay, we're back.
So that it sounded like the space shuttle was taking off, but that was the kettle corn.
Yeah, exactly.
That kettle corn is really good.
I know. Yeah. I may have to go get some.
Where were we? Harry Bryant. So he did several videos for us, like how he sharpens his plane blades, and we got him pedaling his grinder to sharpen these things.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. So I was saying our videos are authentic. We don't stage them. We don't,
Kind of like my podcast. I just sit down and talk to somebody and record it.
And it really comes across as authentic. We don't accept any advertising on the site, and so we don't have to worry about what advertisers may say or what brand of product that is getting featured, or we don't have to worry about anything. We just go to the experts and get their opinions.
Cool. So Steve, if somebody wanted to subscribe to Off Center Harbor, we've got an affiliate relationship now. How would they do that?
Right, and that going to this special place will actually get them a discount. So what they would do is go to offcenterharbor.com/hooked.
Okay.
HOOKED.
Yeah.
So offcenterharbor.com/hooked. And just give their name and email address. They'll get several free videos to check it out, and then they'll also get a coupon code to join at a discount.
Okay.
And then that'll all track, and we can watch that for your organization, and that helps everybody.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
One of the things we do on the site, which I didn't talk about, was it's important for us, classic boats and wooden boats. It always seems to be on the verge of extinction.
Right.
Ever since the 60s and 70s when John Wilson started Wooden Boat Magazine, and it's still alive today, that thread. And so one of the things we really want to do is pass this along to the next generation. So we have a focus on the side of, introducing kids to boats in the water. So passing this along to the next generation is one of our goals.
Is it pretty much all about wooden boats, Steve, or?
Yeah, good question. We're starting to do stuff in electronics and systems and stuff like that. And we focus on classic boats. We don't focus on wooden boats.
Yeah.
Most of them happen to be wooden.
Right.
And we're starting in classic boats because that's the background and expertise of some of our founders. But we're going to slowly branch that out. And one of the things we have on the list is to do classic fiberglass boats. And,
cool.
And systems and things that are more universal. And we're in the process of shooting some of that stuff. So.
And when did you guys start this?
We launched it right up almost Christmas Day in 2012. So we've been at it about 8-9 months. Yeah.
Wow, very cool.
And, basically launched it the 1st of 2012.
Okay. Good. Well, I appreciate your time today, Steve. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I can't think of anything other than thanks for doing this, and it's great to see you at the Wooden Boat Festival in Fort Townsend. This is an amazing spot.
Yeah, and I'm going to get back to Brooklyn in the next couple of years.
Oh, please do.
I want to come out there and visit a bunch of places, including your place there.
Yeah.
And check it out.
We'd love to have you.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Steve.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric and Steve, for taking the time to do the interview during the festival. It was great to meet you guys. You've got a really cool site going, offcenterharbor.com. And I was going to talk for just a minute, a little bit more about that. I'd become a member myself here recently and have been watching the videos and blogs, and they're very well done. They've got articles on such things as boat handling, how to sail, rowing and sculling, families and boats, health and nature, boat building, boat maintenance, boat repair. They've got articles and videos done by people like Harry Bryan, Lynn and Larry Pardee, John Harris, and other folks that are well known in the wooden boat community. The deal is I have an affiliate relationship with them now, which means if you sign up through my website, you get a discount on the membership, which is $29 a year as a regular price, and you get 15% off if you go through my website. And also, before you do sign up, you can actually just get an introductory offer where you can go in and view some videos and kind of get a feel for what it's like. And the way you're going to want to do that is, there's a couple ways, but the simplest way would be to go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/off-center harbor. Again, that's hookedonwoodenboats.com/off-center harbor. That will take you to a page on their website where you can sign up for a free trial subscription, if you will. And once you've done that, and if you like it, which I think you will, there's a lot of great stuff there. If you do sign up, I get paid a small commission. And there's also a lifetime membership available for, I believe it's $290, something like that, for a lifetime. So check it out if you get a chance. Thanks again, Steve and Eric. I would appreciate it if you would connect with me. You can do so by email, and my email address is dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. You can subscribe to my e-news list, hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. You can leave comments on my blog posts on my website. For every podcast that I release on Thursday, I write some show notes in the form of a blog, and that's at hookedonwoodenboats.com. You can also find me on Facebook if you look for Wooden Boat Dan there. And I have a voicemail feedback hotline, 424-261-2360. If you'd like to support what I do and you purchase products at Amazon, if you do that through my website, I get paid a small commission. The way that would work is you would go to the Resources tab on my website, click that, and then click any item listed there. And once you get to Amazon, if you make a purchase of any item, I get a small commission, and I would appreciate that. Also on my homepage is a Jamestown Distributors logo, and they sell marine supplies and woodworking supplies, boat building. They've got great prices, fast shipping. If you click on there and make a purchase, I get paid a little bit also. Don't worry, folks, I'm not getting rich. I think last month I made $47, which is the most I've ever made in 1 month from the podcast. So that probably covers part of my fuel for the month, driving around doing interviews, which is fine. But anyway, I appreciate your support if you like the show. Well, until next week, I hope things go well for you. Get out and build a wooden boat if you haven't already done so. That's what this is all about, is to build and experience wooden boats and the beauty and fun that goes along with that, and the sense of accomplishment when you actually do it yourself. It's pretty cool. So anyway, go for it if you haven't, and if you have questions or need some advice or some tips about how to get started, just shoot me an email. I would love to hear from you. So until next week, keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. Wooden Boat Dan over and out. Have a great week.